"You're not part of this family anymore, Rachel. You never were." Those were my father's words. Not in anger. Not in some heat-of-the-moment explosion. He said it while sipping coffee. At the kitchen table. Calmly. Casually. Like he was reading off the weather report. I stood there, still holding the grocery bags I had picked up for them. Milk, eggs, the sourdough Mom likes. My little niece giggled from the living room. The house smelled like cinnamon candles and lemon cleaner. It could have been a warm, normal Saturday. Instead, my father looked me dead in the eye and cut the cord. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't even blink. I just set the bags down slowly, wiped my palms on my jeans and walked out. Because I knew something he didn't. I owned that house. And he had just evicted himself. My name is Rachel Green. I'm 32 years old, and I was the responsible one growing up. Born and raised in Wilmington, North Carolina, in a modest two-story house with yellow shutters, I was the girl who colored inside the lines. I helped with dishes, I tutored my little brother Caleb, and I stayed in most Friday nights so my parents wouldn't worry. I was the glue of our family. At least, that's what I told myself. While other kids rebelled or explored, I stayed home. I folded laundry. I handled my parents' taxes when I was 17. I even ran the family yard sale every spring. My mom used to say, "Rachel, you're like a third parent." I took it as a compliment. What I didn't realize was, parents don't get thanked. They get used. I paid for my own college, worked weekends, and took online classes to finish my computer science degree. I skipped parties, skipped holidays, skipped dating altogether. Just focus, I told myself. There was a plan. I'd graduate, land a good job, make enough to support my parents when they got older, maybe even buy them a nicer house someday. Spoiler alert, I did. But none of it turned out like I imagined. It started small. Microcuts. My dad saying, "Your brother's the creative one." Mom adding, "You just don't have that spark, sweetie." They laughed when they said it, like it was harmless. But over the years, those jokes formed walls. I was the reliable one, not the lovable one. The dependable mule, not the daughter with dreams. When Caleb dropped out of college, they covered his rent. When I got a full-time job in tech, they barely asked what I did. Something with computers. Mom would say at church when people asked. Something. I built a digital literacy startup in my late 20s, teaching seniors how to use smartphones, email, FaceTime, all the things their kids were too impatient to teach. It started with just me and a whiteboard in a library. Now, 5 years later, we were in 12 cities and had a waiting list that stretched months. But my family didn't ask about any of it. Instead, they called when the sink broke, or when they couldn't figure out how to reset the Wi-Fi, or when Caleb needed a little help with his car payment. I gave. I always gave. Because I thought love looked like sacrifice. There was a moment. I remember it so clearly. I was 28. I'd just gotten my business license approved. I came home with a bottle of sparkling cider and a little cake that said launch day. I placed it on the kitchen counter. My dad glanced at it, grunted, and changed the channel. Mom said, "Oh, that's nice, hon. Can you grab eggs tomorrow?" That was the celebration. I ate the cake alone in my room that night, half crying, half smiling, because I still believed one day they'd see me. They'd say, "Rachel, we're proud of you." But that day never came. The shift began when I started saving. I'd been quietly putting money away for something big. I didn't tell anyone, not even my best friend, Tasha. I just knew I wanted security, a place that could be mine. At first, I looked at apartments, then condos. Then one day, scrolling late at night, I saw it. My childhood home, listed quietly under a foreclosure notice. It took me a full minute to process what I was seeing. The address, the photo, that yellow shutter paint, now faded and cracked. Turns out my parents had refinanced 3 times. Caleb had defaulted on a private loan. And no one had told me. No one thought to tell me. I drove over that weekend. They were still living there, clueless. My father grumbled about the rising bills. "Everything's a scam these days," he said. Mom sighed, rubbing her temples. "We'll figure it out." We always do. And I stood there, thinking, you haven't figured anything out. You've just survived on luck. On me. So I made a quiet call. Then a few more. And within 30 days, I bought the house through a private deal with the bank.
Cash.
No mortgage. No loans. The deed had my name on it. Rachel Green, owner. I didn't evict them. I didn't say a word. I just waited. The moment finally came on a Sunday morning. Dad was in one of his moods. Caleb was over with his new girlfriend, acting like he owned the place. I had just come from delivering tablets to a senior center. Still had my name tag on. You think you're better than us, don't you? Dad said suddenly, out of nowhere. I paused. What? You walk in here like you're some savior. You're not even really part of this family anymore, Rachel. Caleb chuckled. Come on, she's just here for the free food. And something in me snapped, not loud, not angry. Just done. I placed the grocery bag on the counter and walked to the living room cabinet. Pulled out the folder I'd been keeping. Opened it slowly. Turned it toward my father. His face went pale. Caleb squinted at the first page. Deed of ownership. My father stared at the paper like it was written in a foreign language. His lips parted slightly, eyes darting from line to line. Caleb leaned in, his cocky smirk melting into confusion. What is this? Dad finally asked. I didn't say a word. I just stood still, letting the silence stretch. Mom stepped in from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. What's going on? Caleb answered for me. This says she owns the house. Mom blinked. What? I took a breath, slow and steady. The house went into quiet foreclosure 3 months ago. You didn't know? She looked stunned.
No.
We were behind, but your father was handling it. I nodded, gently tapping the folder. The bank was preparing to list it. I bought it before it hit the market. Dad's voice sharpened. You what? I locked eyes with him. I bought the house. In cash. Through my LLC. It belongs to me now. Caleb scoffed. That's insane. Why would you do that? Because I lived in this house too, I said, finally letting emotion crack through. Because I have memories here. And because, frankly, I didn't trust any of you to save it. You went behind our backs, my dad hissed. You think that's noble? No, I said. I think it's responsible. The room was thick with tension. I felt my knees wanting to give, but I stayed planted. Dad snatched the papers from the folder, flipping through pages like he could argue with the print. This is a mistake, he muttered. You're confused. The bank would have told me. They sent 3 notices, I said. You ignored them. I let the weight of my words sit there, heavy and final. That's when Mom started crying. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just quiet, leaking tears as she sat on the armrest. I didn't know, she whispered. I didn't know it was that bad. I looked at her for a long time. I believed her, but I didn't forgive her. Because ignorance didn't absolve them of everything they let happen. I'm not kicking you out, I said, softer now. That's not who I am. Dad narrowed his eyes. Then what do you want? I want boundaries, I said. You'll pay rent. Below market value, sure. But enough to keep this house afloat. No more surprise debts. No more we thought you could help just this once texts. And if we say no? I folded the folder back up. Then you'll have 30 days to vacate. Simple.
Clear. Calm.
Caleb stood up, like he was going to say something. But then he sat back down. The reality was sinking in. For once, I wasn't asking for respect. I was demanding it. That night, I didn't go back to my apartment. I stayed. In the guest room. The same room they used to store old boxes and broken lamps. The one with the crooked blinds and the light bulb that buzzed. I laid down on that creaky mattress and stared at the ceiling, letting the hum of silence settle into my bones. And for the first time in years, I slept like someone who belonged. Not because they allowed it, but because I claimed it. The next morning was quiet. Mom made coffee, but didn't speak. Dad left early. I sat on the porch, watching the neighborhood kids ride their bikes down the hill, just like I used to. I thought about everything I had done alone. How every achievement had been met with silence. How many times I'd begged for scraps of recognition. But something shifted in me that day. I no longer needed their applause. I had built something solid, even when no one was watching. And now, I had the paper to prove it. Later that week, I got a message. It was from Mr. Barkley's daughter, the senior client I helped last fall. "Hi, Rachel," it read. "Dad passed peacefully last night. Just wanted you to know how much your sessions meant to him. He watched videos from his military days using the iPad you helped him set up. Thank you. Truly." I cried. Not the broken kind. The kind that washes something clean. That letter was worth more than any trophy. More than my father's stubborn silence. More than all the years I spent twisting myself to fit into a space that never saw me fully. A few days later, Caleb called. His tone was off. Hesitant. "Hey," he said. "That woman you helped at Dad's church? She runs a whole senior living center now. They're interested in your business." I didn't reply right away. He added, "Just thought you'd want to know." "That's pretty cool." There was no "I'm sorry." No sudden flood of praise. Just a few words. But they were enough. That's when it hit me. My success didn't have to roar. It could hum. Soft and steady. Like peace. Like ownership. Like home. The calm didn't last long. That weekend, I got a call from Mom while I was setting up a Wi-Fi tutorial for a client. She never called me during business hours. "I just don't understand what you're doing, Rachel," she said the moment I picked up. "I'm working," I said quietly. "Can this wait? Your father's been in a terrible mood. He says you're trying to humiliate him." I closed my laptop slowly.
No, Mom.
"I'm just protecting myself." "From your family?" she snapped. "What did we ever do to you that was so awful?" I almost laughed. Almost. "You mean, besides telling me I wasn't part of the family? Besides hiding my college acceptance and pretending it never came?" "That was years ago," she whispered. "We were going through a lot. You don't understand what it was like trying to keep things together." "No," I said calmly. "I do understand. I lived through it too. I just wasn't allowed to talk about it." She went quiet. Then, soft and sharp. "You've changed." "I hope so," I said. I had to. That night, I showed up for dinner. Not because I owed it to them, but because I wanted to see for myself how deep the cracks had gone. The house was cleaner than usual. Mom had made meatloaf, my favorite as a kid, but something I hadn't eaten in years. Dad didn't speak much during the meal. He pushed mashed potatoes around his plate and kept glancing at me like I was a stranger. "So," Caleb said, attempting conversation, "what's next for you?" "More old folks and gadgets." His tone wasn't insulting exactly, but it had that bite. I looked him in the eye. "Actually, yes. I'm hiring now. We just signed a partnership with a senior care app." He raised an eyebrow.
Damn.
"I didn't think that thing would go anywhere." I smiled. "You never did." Silence stretched. Mom set down her fork. "Do we really need to do this at the dinner table?" "I'm not the one who started it," I said softly. After dinner, I went to the backyard. That swing Dad installed when I was 6 still hung from the old oak. I stood under it for a while, remembering how I used to stare at the stars from that very spot, imagining a world where people saw me for what I could be. Caleb joined me a few minutes later. He shoved his hands in his pockets. "Look," he said, not meeting my eyes, "I didn't know about the college letter. I didn't know they hid it from you." I turned to him. "That's the thing, Caleb. You didn't want to know. You were too busy being the golden child." His face hardened. "That's not fair." "Neither was any of this," I replied. He sighed. "So, what happens now? You gonna kick them out?" "No," I said. "But the rules stay. Rent. Boundaries. I won't be manipulated into saving anyone anymore." "What if they can't pay?" "They figure it out. Like I had to." He didn't argue. Because he knew I wasn't bluffing. And maybe, just maybe, he respected me for it. The following week, Dad cornered me in the garage. He was sorting through old boxes, acting like he wasn't waiting for me to walk in. "I talked to the bank," he said finally. "They confirmed the transfer. This house, it really is yours. I nodded. You must feel proud. No, I said. I feel sad. He flinched. Sad that it took losing control for you to finally see me. He didn't say anything. Then he opened a dusty box and pulled out something wrapped in an old t-shirt. He handed it to me. A photo frame. Me, age 7, holding a spelling bee trophy. Smiling so wide my teeth looked too big for my face. I kept this, he said. My hands trembled. Then why didn't you ever act like it? His voice cracked. Because I didn't know how to love you the way you needed. I didn't respond. Because I didn't know what to do with that kind of honesty. He didn't apologize. Not directly. But maybe this was his version of it. And somehow it was enough.
For now.
A week later, Caleb called again. He sounded different. Lighter.
Hey.
I've been thinking. Dangerous, I teased. He laughed. Seriously. I told Dad to stop calling you every time something breaks. You're not a walking repair service. That's a first, I said. He paused. Also, I might start helping you with the business. I blinked. You want to help me? Not for free, he added quickly. But yeah, I want to learn. I smiled.
All right.
But I'm the boss. Obviously. In some strange way, the house had become something else. Not a battleground. A starting point. And the more I showed up as myself, confident, firm, kind but not naive, the more things shifted. Not overnight. Not like a fairy tale. But like a slow thaw. One afternoon, I found Mom in the kitchen again. She was humming, peeling apples. When she saw me, she handed me a small index card. A recipe. Her old apple pie one. I figured if you're going to be the landlord, you should learn how to make the house smell like a home. I didn't cry, but something in me softened. Because even though she never said, I'm sorry, she finally offered something real. Connection. Effort. A bridge. And I took it. It was strange how fast things settled once the roles were clear. I wasn't fighting to belong anymore. I had stopped asking for love in languages my family didn't speak. Instead, I let my actions speak for me. 2 months after the deed transfer, we signed an agreement, formal lease papers. I had a lawyer draft it, just to make everything official. Mom looked uncomfortable. Dad looked cornered. But I didn't waver. This isn't about punishment, I said. It's about clarity. They both signed. Caleb witnessed the papers. I watched his hands shake slightly as he added his name. There was something final about the moment. And freeing. Around that time, Lisa called me, my old friend from college I hadn't spoken to in years. I saw the article about your company in the local tech blog, she said breathlessly. Rachel, this is incredible. I smiled. Thanks. It's been a journey. She hesitated. I left my job. Burnout. No plan. But I remember you once said you believed I was good at connecting with people. You are, I said without hesitation. Do you want to come help run outreach for my business?
She paused.
Are you serious? I am. That same week, I cleared out the old guest room, the one I had once folded laundry in while hiding my mom's note in my backpack pocket. It became our office. 2 desks, 1 coffee machine, and a whiteboard that said, "We teach with patience." Mom peeked in one morning while Lisa and I were setting up a Zoom session for a senior client. You're doing something good here, she said quietly. I looked up. Thanks. I was wrong, she added. That stopped me. I used to think you were wasting your potential, she went on. But maybe I just didn't know what your potential really looked like. Her eyes welled up. But she didn't cry. Neither did I. Because sometimes healing doesn't come with breakdowns. Sometimes it arrives like a gentle knock on a door you thought was permanently shut. Dad took longer. He still struggled to make eye contact when I entered a room. But then one Friday afternoon, I found a small toolbox on my porch. Inside, all the tools I had learned to use from him as a little girl. Labeled. Organized.
Clean.
No note. But I knew what it meant. A quiet offering. His way of saying, "You've built something." I see it now. One morning, I held a community class on tech for seniors in the rec center. The same center where Mr. Barkley had first learned to FaceTime. We had 30 people show up. Ms. Grace brought cookies. Someone else brought their grandkid. And halfway through the class, Caleb walked in, wearing a polo shirt with our company logo. "I'm just shadowing today," he told one of the seniors. The man smiled. "You're lucky to work for a woman like that." Caleb nodded slowly.
Yeah.
"I know." That evening, we all stayed to clean up. As I packed up extension cords and marker pens, Caleb leaned against the doorframe. "You know, I used to think Dad gave you the house out of guilt," he said. "But now, I think he just finally saw what you'd built." I nodded. I don't think he could ignore it anymore. Caleb exhaled. "I still have a lot to unlearn." "So do I said. "But we're doing it." Lisa started organizing workshops in other cities. We began hiring part-time helpers. I met a woman who'd lost her daughter in a car crash and who said that learning to video call her granddaughter had brought her back to life. And one day, Ms. Grace handed me a little notepad with a list of names.
"Other folks who need you," she said.
That night, I cried for the first time in months. Not from grief.
From awe.
Because this little thing I built, the thing no one believed in, was rippling outward. Not like a fire, but like light. I didn't need revenge. I needed roots. I needed to know I was allowed to exist without apology. And once I had that, everything else became quiet.
Steady. Strong.
6 months later, the house looked completely different. Not just because of the new paint or the way we'd repurposed the dining room into a digital classroom. It was the feeling. It no longer held the echo of exclusion. It no longer whispered, "You don't belong here." Now, it hummed with purpose. The hallway where I once overheard my dad say I was too soft for business now had portraits of smiling seniors taped up with sticky notes that read, "Thank you, Rachel," and "You gave me back my voice." The back porch? Now a space where local women gathered once a week. Lisa's idea, for coffee, Wi-Fi tutorials, and support circles. We called it Second Start Saturdays. One morning, I walked downstairs and found my mom setting out muffins for the women. She wore her apron, one I hadn't seen in years. She turned to me and said, "I used your recipe this time." I blinked. "You remembered it?" She shrugged. "I never forgot. I just pretended I had." There was no need for more words. Sometimes, repair doesn't sound like an apology. It sounds like blueberry muffins in a reused tin. Caleb got a job managing a tech installation branch for senior centers. He told me I inspired him. I smiled but didn't say anything, because I wasn't holding on to being right anymore. Just being whole. One Sunday, I went to the old church. Not out of obligation. Just curiosity. Ms. Grace waved from across the aisle. A little girl beside her tugged on my sleeve. "Are you the tech lady?" she whispered. "I am," I smiled. She nodded solemnly. "My grandma said you made her brave." That moment sat in my chest for days. Underscore 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 underscore. Later that month, I got a letter in the mail. Not an email. A real letter. Handwritten. From a woman in Oregon who'd watched our free YouTube tutorials and started teaching her local retirement home. She wrote, "You reminded me that kindness can be revolutionary, and that maybe it's not too late for me to build something too." I cried reading that. Not the quiet, composed kind of crying, but the sobbing, chest-clenching kind that comes from being seen after years of feeling invisible. That summer, I took the toolbox Dad had left on my porch. I mounted a floating shelf in the office and placed one single item on it. A framed sticky note that said, "You make tech less scary." I didn't need degrees or applause. Just that. That small truth. One day, while wrapping up a webinar, I glanced at the comment section. Someone had typed, "I've never been noticed in my family, but you just made me feel like maybe I matter." I stared at that comment longer than I should have, because I had once been that person. sitting in silence, waiting for anyone to say, I see you. And now it was me holding the light, not to shine on myself, but to pass it on, to leave it behind, like a lantern on a trail, so that someone else might see just far enough to take the next step. I thought about Grandma that day, her quiet hugs, her whispered reassurances, the time she told me, the world may not clap for you, Rachel, but that doesn't mean you didn't win. She was right. Some victories don't echo loudly. They settle, like peace. So, if you're still reading this or listening, if you've ever been told that you don't matter, or that your story isn't worth hearing, I'm here to tell you they were wrong. You are not invisible. You are not behind. You are walking a path no one's had the courage to pave before. And that's not weakness. It's legacy. So take a deep breath and build. Quietly, bravely. Your story starts right here.